There is a question that almost always appears when two strangers meet in the modern world. Not who do you belong to or which gods do you honor, but what do you do for a living? It sounds harmless, a small social key that opens the conversation. But behind it lies a strange historical shift. When we ask what someone does for work, we often ask more than how they earn a living. We ask where they stand, how disciplined they are, what they have become. Work has not always carried this weight. For much of human history, work was something people did because something had to be done. It was not always separated from life as a distinct category called the job. Older forms of work were tied to rhythm rather than clock time, to season rather than schedule, to task rather than abstract working hours. People worked until the sheep had been shorn, until the grain was brought in, until the house was standing. Work becomes something fundamentally different when it is separated from the rest of life and turned into something that can be measured, bought, sold, supervised, and morally judged. With agriculture, human beings became bound to place. The land demanded return. The seasons became a calendar of obligations. And in estate societies, work was inherited and fixed. The shoemaker's son became a shoemaker. People did not choose themselves through work. The old world said, "This is your place." The modern world says, "You are responsible for becoming something." That is a much heavier sentence. One of the great transformations comes with what Max Weber called the Protestant work ethic. Weber saw a connection between religious self-discipline, calling, thrift, and the emergence of a capitalist spirit. Work became more than necessity. It became a sign, a way to display order, and perhaps even divine election. Even ordinary work could take on religious weight. The everyday duty of the individual could be understood as a kind of sacred assignment. Work was no longer only something one did in order to live. It became something through which one showed what kind of person one was. It is no longer enough to do what is required. One must be diligent, punctual, reliable. Not only work, but be a working person. Then industrialization arrived and took time away from the sun, the season, and the task, and gave it to the clock. The historian E.P. Thompson described how industrial capitalism changed humanity's relationship to time. In the factory, time became discipline. The worker did not only sell skill or strength, he sold hours. When work is measured in time, life itself becomes measurable. Late arrival becomes a moral failure. Rest becomes suspicious. Slowness becomes disobedience. Industrialization does not only create the factory worker, it creates a new kind of human being, the time-disciplined human, a body that arrives when the signal sounds, a soul that begins to feel guilt when it is not producing. Karl Marx saw another side of this transformation. In his early writings on alienated labor, he described how the worker could become estranged from his own work, from its product, from other people, and eventually from himself. This is one of modernity's deepest paradoxes. At the same time as work becomes increasingly important to identity, many people's actual work becomes increasingly alien to them. Work tells you who you are, but work does not feel like you. During the 19th and 20th centuries, occupation gained new social visibility. One is an engineer, a teacher, a nurse, a consultant. The title becomes a social garment that speaks before the person has time to. The CV becomes a secular life story, not a story of the soul, but of education, productivity, and employability. Hannah Arendt warned of how much of human life modernity risks pressing into the category of work. When everything becomes work, we lose the words for what is not work. Thinking becomes knowledge work. Care becomes care work. Building relationships becomes networking. Even rest becomes recovery, something justified only because it will make us productive again. In the digital age, work follows us home in the phone, lives in the calendar and the email, sits in the body as a vibration. The factory whistle has become a notification. When work can happen everywhere, it can also happen always. And when work expresses who you are, it becomes difficult to stop without feeling that you are abandoning yourself. When work becomes identity, the human being becomes vulnerable in a new way. The person who loses work does not only lose income, they may lose their language, their context, their rank, their mourning, their mirror. This may be the true strangeness, that a civilization which so often claims to value freedom has made so many people dependent on work in order to feel allowed to exist. So when did work become identity? Not on a single date. It happened slowly, when agriculture bound us to place, when religion made diligence moral, when industrialism made time measurable, when capitalism made labor power sellable, when the digital world made work present everywhere, and finally, when we began answering the question, "Who are you?" with the name of the thing that pays the rent. But perhaps an older question remains beneath all of this. Not what do you do for work, but what remains in you when work falls silent? There, in that silence, another kind of identity may begin. One that does not need to clock in to be real.